Maggie Holloway pressed her hand over her youngest daughter's mouth to stop the scream. The auctioneer was calling out numbers now, not for cattle, not for land, but for her 17-year-old Josie. "Lot number 1, he bellowed. "One healthy female, good breeding age." Maggie's legs buckled. 7 children clutched at her skirts, and she could do nothing but watch as men placed bids on her firstborn, like she was livestock. Before we continue Maggie's story, if you believe every mother deserves to protect her children, hit that subscribe button right now. Stay with us until the very end to see how one man's courage changed 8 lives forever. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's get back to that courthouse in Willow Creek, where Maggie's worst nightmare was just beginning. The courthouse in Willow Creek, Colorado Territory, had never seen anything like this. January 1879 brought a cold so bitter it cracked the windows, but inside, 40 men pressed close together, their breath fogging the air, their eyes fixed on the woman and children huddled near the judge's bench. Maggie Holloway stood with her back straight, though every muscle in her body screamed to collapse. 7 children surrounded her. Josie, 17, stood at her right face, pale as death. Abby, 15, clutched a worn Bible to her chest like a shield. Lottie, 13, had positioned herself in front of the younger ones, fists clenched. Ellie, 11, wept silently into her sleeve. Rosie, 8, kept whispering prayers under her breath. Little Lily, 5, buried her face in Maggie's skirt. And Sammy, barely 3, slept against his mother's shoulder, mercifully unaware. "Order," Judge Walter Prescott called, though no one was speaking. The silence was worse than noise. "We will proceed with the settlement of debts owed by the estate of Ezra Holloway, deceased." "This ain't right, Judge." Dr. James Patterson stepped forward from the crowd. "You can't auction off a widow and her children like they're furniture." "The law is clear, Doctor." Judge Prescott's voice held no warmth. Mrs. Holloway resided in her father-in-law's household as a dependent. When Ezra Holloway died with debts exceeding assets, all household property became subject to creditor claims. "Property." Dr. Patterson's wife, Ada, grabbed his arm. "These are human beings, Walter. Children. They are also financial obligations." The judge adjusted his spectacles. "Mr. Wade has generously agreed to accept household assets in lieu of the full debt owed. This includes all dependents of the estate." Maggie's eyes found Cornelius Wade in the corner, 52 years old with a smile that made her skin crawl. He'd been circling her family for months, ever since William died, always offering help, always watching Josie with those cold, calculating eyes. "Mama," Josie whispered. "He's looking at me again. Don't look back." Maggie's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Whatever happens, don't look at him." "Lot number 1, the auctioneer bellowed. A thin man with a waxed mustache, he seemed almost bored by the proceedings. "One female, age 17. Healthy, literate, skilled in household management. Good breeding stock." Breeding stock. Maggie lunged forward before she could stop herself. "No, you can't. She's my daughter. She's a child." "Ma'am, you will control yourself." Judge Prescott's gavel cracked against wood. "Or I will have you removed and proceed without your presence." "Mama, don't." Josie grabbed her mother's arm. "Please, I can bear it. Just keep the little one safe." "I won't let them take you." Maggie's voice broke. "I won't." "Opening bid for lot number 1, the auctioneer continued. "Set at $30. $35. Cornelius Wade's voice cut through the murmuring. He stepped forward, tipping his hat with mock courtesy. "And I'll take good care of her, Mrs. Holloway. Real good care." Josie made a sound like a wounded animal. Abby pulled her sister close, her face twisted with fury and fear. "40. Another voice. Dutch Miller, who ran the saloon. His reputation with women was well known in 3 counties. 45. Wade again, louder now. 50. A stranger in a fine coat, his smile cold and appraising. Maggie's vision blurred. This couldn't be happening. Not in America, not to her children. She'd survived William's death, survived Ezra's cruelty, survived 2 years of poverty and shame. But this watching men bid on her 17-year-old daughter. This would kill her. "Mama?" Little Rosie tugged at her skirt. "Why are those men wanting to buy Josie?" Maggie couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. 60. Wade's voice held triumph now. $60 for the eldest, and I'll bid on the mother too once we're done. Whole family under one roof, very efficient. You'll touch none of them. Dr. Patterson stepped forward again. "Wade, so help me God." "You threatening me, Doc?" Wade's smile never faltered. "That's a crime, you know. Judge Prescott here can tell you all about it." The courthouse door crashed open. Snow and wind roared in along with a man Maggie had never seen before. He was tall, over 6 feet, wearing a heavy sheepskin coat dusted with fresh powder. His hat was pulled low, but she could see dark hair streaked with gray, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of wet earth. He moved like a man who'd seen war, controlled, dangerous. "Auction still going." His voice carried despite the wind. "Close that door," Judge Prescott barked. "You're letting in the weather." The stranger complied, then turned to face the room. His gaze swept across the crowd, paused on Maggie and her children, then moved to the judge. Something shifted in his expression when he saw Josie standing rigid with fear. "I asked if the auction's still open." "It is." The judge frowned. "And you are?" "Name's Elijah McAllister. Got a ranch 20 miles north of here." He shook snow from his shoulders. "Heard you were selling off Ezra Holloway's estate." "Estate's mostly gone." Wade's voice dripped contempt. "We're down to the family now. His daughter-in-law and her brood. 7 brats total." Elijah McAllister's jaw tightened. His eyes cut to Wade with a look that made the older man take a step back. "I heard," Elijah said quietly. "That's why I'm here." "Current bid for Lot 1 is $60, the auctioneer announced. "From Mr. Wade. Do you wish to bid, Mr. McAllister?" Elijah stepped forward. As he moved closer, Maggie could see him more clearly. Weathered skin from sun and wind, a scar running down his left forearm, hands that had seen hard labor. Not a rich man, but not destitute either. His eyes met hers for just a moment. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. "I don't want Lot 1, Elijah said. Maggie's heart cracked. Of course. Why would anyone want to take on 7 children? Why would I want all of them? Elijah's voice rang clear. The mother and all 7 children. Together. What's the total debt? The courthouse erupted in whispers. Judge Prescott shuffled his papers, clearly flustered. The total debt owed to Mr. Wade's accounts is $300, the judge stammered. But Mr. Wade has expressed interest in taking the family in installments. I don't care what Wade wants. Elijah reached into his coat and pulled out a leather wallet. $300 for the whole family. Not split up, not sold separately, together. Now wait just a minute. Wade started forward. You got $300, Wade. Elijah's voice was quiet, but it stopped the older man cold. You willing to pay $300 cash right now? Wade's face went purple. That's not how this works. I'm the creditor. I have rights. You have the right to collect the debt. Elijah turned to Judge Prescott. Isn't that correct? Judge, Mr. Wade is owed $300. If I pay $300, the debt is satisfied. The family is free. Well, that is to say. The judge looked at Wade, then at Elijah, then at the money visible in the leather wallet. Technically, yes. If the debt is paid in full, the claim is satisfied. Then count it. Elijah set the wallet on the judge's bench. $300, every cent I have. Maggie couldn't move, couldn't think. This stranger, This man she'd never met was spending his entire savings on her family. Why? What did he want? "This is fraud," Wade snarled. "Collusion. You can't just—" "I can and I am." Elijah's voice hardened. "Unless you want to explain to the territorial marshal why you were trying to buy a 17-year-old girl for breeding stock." The color drained from Wade's face. "I never said—" "I heard you. So did everyone else in this room." Elijah looked around at the crowd. "Didn't you—" Silence. Then Dr. Patterson cleared his throat. "I heard it clear as day." "So did I," Mrs. Patterson added. "Me too," called a voice from the back. Then another, and another. Wade's eyes darted around the room, seeing the tide turning against him. His jaw worked, but no words came out. Judge Prescott counted the money quickly. $300. The debt is satisfied. His gavel cracked. Mrs. Holloway and her children are released to Mr. McAllister's custody. Custody. Maggie finally found her voice. "What does that mean?" "It means, ma'am," Judge Prescott said, not meeting her eyes, "that you and your children are now Mr. McAllister's legal responsibility. You reside under his authority until such time as other arrangements can be made." "She's trading one master for another," Wade sneered. "At least I would have made her comfortable." Elijah moved so fast Maggie gasped. One moment he was standing still. The next he had Wade pressed against the wall, one hand fisted in the man's collar. "You say one more word about this family," Elijah said, his voice barely above a whisper, "and I'll make sure you're eating through a straw for a month. Understand?" Wade's eyes bulged. He nodded frantically. Elijah released him and stepped back, adjusting his coat with deliberate calm. "Sorry, ma'am," he said to Maggie, "but I won't have men speaking about you or your daughters that way." Maggie stared at him. Josie had stopped shaking. Abby's grip on her Bible had loosened slightly. Even Lottie, fierce, stubborn Lottie, looked uncertain rather than hostile. "We should go," Elijah said. "Storm's getting worse. I've got a wagon outside with room for everyone." "Wait," Maggie stepped forward. "I don't understand. Why would you do this? You don't know us. You just spent everything you have on strangers." Elijah was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Because 20 years ago, someone did the same thing to my family. Sold my stepmother and her children to pay debts. She died that winter in a boarding house taking in laundry to survive." He met Maggie's eyes. "I swore if I ever had the means, I'd never let that happen to another woman, another family." "But $300 is money. It can be earned again." His gaze moved to her children one by one, lingering on little Sammy asleep against her shoulder. "Some things can't be replaced, Mrs. Holloway. I learned that the hard way." Maggie felt tears burning her eyes. She blinked them back. She'd cried enough. Now she needed to think. "What do you want from us?" she asked quietly. "In exchange for this, generosity. Nothing you're not willing to give." Elijah's voice was steady. "I've got a ranch that needs a housekeeper. Your older girls can help with chores if they're willing. Your boy's too young for much, but children have a way of growing into usefulness. And me?" Maggie's chin lifted. "What do you expect from me?" Something flickered in his eyes. "Respect, maybe." "I expect you to keep my house in order, Mrs. Holloway. Cook meals. Tend the chickens. Make sure those children grow up fed and educated." He paused. "Nothing more. Nothing you'd be ashamed to tell a preacher." "Mama," Josie whispered. He seems honest." "Honest men don't exist," Abby muttered. "Not when it comes to women." "Maybe not." Elijah heard her. His voice softened. "But I'm not asking you to trust me, miss. I'm asking you to give me a chance to earn that trust, however long it takes." Lottie stepped forward, chin jutting out. And if we decide we don't want to stay, if we want to leave, then I'll give you money and horses and my blessing." Elijah met the girl's defiant gaze without flinching. "I'm not buying slaves, young lady. I'm offering a home. There's a difference." "Prove it," Lottie challenged. "I intend to." Elijah turned back to Maggie. "Ma'am, we need to go. The road to my ranch gets dangerous in heavy snow. We can talk more when everyone's warm and fed." Maggie looked at her children. Josie pale but hopeful. Abby suspicious but listening. Lottie ready to fight. Ellie tears still streaming but calmer now. Rosie actually smiling. Lily peeking out from behind skirts. Sammy still sleeping peacefully. What choice did she have? Stay here in Willow Creek where Wade would never stop circling. Try to survive another winter with no money, no home, no protection, or follow this stranger into the mountains and pray he was what he seemed. "All right," Maggie said. "We'll come with you, Mr. McAllister, but I have conditions." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "Name them." "My children stay together. Always. No matter what." "Agreed." "I work for wages, not charity. Whatever you pay your ranch hands, I want the same." Something like surprise crossed his face, followed by approval. "Fair enough." "And my daughters." Maggie's voice hardened. "No man touches them. Not you, not your workers, not anyone. If I find out otherwise, I'll kill you myself." The words hung in the cold air. Several people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Elijah didn't flinch. "Mrs. Holloway, I've got 2 men working my ranch, Rafael and Diego Moreno. Good men, both of them. They've been with me 4 years, and they've never once behaved improperly toward any woman." His voice dropped. "As for me, I made a vow to God after my stepmother died. I don't break vows." Maggie studied his face, looking for the lie that tell the crack in the facade. She found nothing but weariness and something that might have been hope. "Then we have a deal, Mr. McAllister." "Elijah," he said, "or Eli if you prefer. Mr. McAllister was my father, and he's been dead 20 years. "Eli, then." Maggie gathered her children. "Girls, get your things. We're leaving." "We don't have any things, Mama," Ellie whispered. "They took everything." Eli's jaw tightened. "Then we'll get you new things. Come on." They filed out of the courthouse into the bitter cold. Wade watched them go, his face twisted with rage. Judge Prescott was already shuffling papers for the next piece of business. The wagon was solid and well-maintained, lined with hay and heavy blankets. 2 sturdy draft horses stood patiently in the traces, and a large gray gelding was tied to the back. "Older girls can sit up front with me if they want," Eli said. "Younger ones can bundle up in the back with their mother. It's warmer in the hay." "I'll ride up front." Lottie's chin jutted out. "I ain't scared of a little cold." "Lottie," Maggie started. "Let her." Eli shrugged. "She wants to keep an eye on me. Can't blame her for that." Maggie helped the younger children into the wagon bed, tucking blankets around them until only their faces showed. Sammy woke briefly, looked around with confused eyes, then settled against his mother and went back to sleep. Josie and Abby climbed up beside Lottie on the driver's bench. Eli mounted Buck his gray gelding and positioned himself at the front. "Stay close behind me," he called back. "The road's marked with posts, but snow can hide them. If you lose sight of me, just stop. I'll come back for you." "I can drive," Josie said. "I learned on our farm in Boston." "Good." Eli's voice held no condescension. "Then take the reins, Miss Holloway. Your mother looks like she needs rest more than she needs to prove herself." Josie glanced at Maggie, who nodded. The girl took the reins with hands that barely trembled. They left Willow Creek behind within minutes, swallowed by snow and distance. The world narrowed to Buck's rump, ahead the creak of the wagon and the whistle of wind. In the wagon bed, Maggie held her youngest children close. Ellie had stopped crying. Rosie was humming softly. Lily had fallen asleep against her mother's side. "Mama." Rosie's voice was small but clear. Is that man going to be our new papa? Maggie's throat tightened. No, sweetheart. He's just helping us. But he paid money for us, like Papa paid money for our house. That's different. How? Maggie didn't have an answer. An hour passed. 2. The snow fell thicker, the wind driving it into drifts that reached halfway up the wagon wheels. From the driver's bench, Maggie heard Lottie's voice sharp with challenge. Why'd you really do it? Do what? Eli's voice was calm. Spend all your money on us. Don't give me that story about your stepmother. Men, don't do things like that for nothing. A pause. Then Eli's voice quieter now. You're right to be suspicious, Miss Lottie. Most men don't do things for nothing. So what's your price? I told your mother, a housekeeper, help with the ranch. That's not worth $300? Maybe not to you. Another pause. But I've been alone on that ranch for 5 years, Miss Lottie. Eating my own bad cooking. Coming home to empty rooms. Watching other men's families gather for Christmas while I sit by myself. Lottie was silent. $300 is a lot of money. Eli continued. But loneliness costs more. And your family, 8 people who need a home, who need protection, who might someday need a friend that's worth more than money to me. You're saying you bought a family. I'm saying I bought a chance. Eli's voice hardened slightly. A chance to do something right for once. A chance to be useful to someone. A chance to look into the mirror and not hate what I see. More silence. Then Lottie's voice, smaller now. What do you see when you look in the mirror? A man who failed everyone he ever loved. Eli's words came rough. I couldn't save my mother. I couldn't save my stepmother. I couldn't find my step-siblings after they got sent east on the orphan trains. I couldn't even save my own baby sister from marrying a man who doesn't deserve her. That's a lot of couldn'ts. Yes, it is. A long pause. But today I could. Today I walked into that courthouse and I could do something. So I did. Maggie listened from the wagon bed, her eyes burning. This man, this stranger, carried wounds as deep as her own, maybe deeper. The storm worsened. Eli called a halt near a small cabin nestled against a hillside. Wheeler's place, he shouted over the wind. They'll shelter us for the night. The door opened before they reached it, revealing a bearded man in his 50s and a woman with kind eyes. Eli McAllister, the man called. That you who've you got with you? Long story, Silas. Eli dismounted and helped the children down from the wagon. Can you put us up for the night? Course we can. The woman Martha Wheeler was already ushering the children inside. Lord have mercy, look at these little ones, half frozen all of them. The cabin was blissfully warm. Maggie felt sensation returning to her face and hands in painful prickles. Martha took Sammy from her arms with practiced efficiency. When did you last eat, child? Martha asked Maggie. Yesterday. Martha made a noise of pure disgust and bustled toward the stove. Silas Wheeler pulled Eli aside, but Maggie heard their conversation anyway. Who are they, Eli? Ezra Holloway's daughter-in-law and her children. They were being auctioned off to pay his debts. Auctioned? Silas's voice rose. That's not legal. Judge Prescott made it legal. Prescott's a snake. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows it. No one does anything about it. Eli's voice was bitter. Wade was bidding on the eldest girl, 17-year-old Silas. He called her breeding stock. Silas swore under his breath. So you stepped in. Spent every cent I had. $300? Worth it. Silas studied his friend for a long moment. You're either the best man I know or the biggest fool. Probably both. Martha fed them all thick stew and fresh bread and strong coffee. The children ate like they hadn't seen food in weeks, which Maggie realized they nearly hadn't. When bellies were full and bodies were warm, Martha led Maggie and the girls to a small back room. It's cramped, Martha apologized, but it's private. You and the little ones can sleep in here. The older girls can share the loft with extra blankets." "Thank you." Maggie's voice cracked. "You don't know what this means." "I know exactly what it means." Martha's eyes were bright. "I was a widow once too, 20 years ago before Silas found me. I know what it's like to have nothing and no one." She squeezed Maggie's hands. "Eli McAllister is a good man. Better than he knows. Give him a chance." After the children were settled, after the house went quiet, Maggie crept to the door and opened it a crack. She could see Eli sitting by the fire staring into the flames. He looked tired. Young somehow without his hat and coat. And desperately alone. Maggie pushed the door open wider. Eli looked up. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly. "Too much to think about." "Same." Maggie crossed the room and sat in the chair across from him. The fire crackled between them. "Why didn't you tell me about Wade?" she asked. "About what he really wanted with Josie." Eli was quiet for a moment. "Figured you already knew." "I suspected, but hearing it confirmed." Maggie's hands clenched in her lap. "If you hadn't come..." "Don't." Eli's voice was rough. "Don't think about what didn't happen. Think about what did. You saved my daughter." Maggie met his eyes. "You saved all of them. How am I supposed to repay that?" "I told you, I don't want repayment." "Everyone wants something." "Then maybe I want something that can't be bought." Eli leaned back in his chair. "Maybe I want to come home to a warm house and children's laughter. Maybe I want to sit at a table with people who give a damn whether I live or die. Maybe I want..." He stopped. "Maybe I just want to matter to someone." Maggie studied his face in the firelight. The weariness, the loneliness, the desperate hope he was trying so hard to hide. "You matter," she said quietly. "To me. To my children. After what you did today, you matter." Something shifted in Eli's expression. His shoulders dropped slightly, tension bleeding out. "Thank you for that." "Don't thank me yet." Maggie's voice hardened. "I don't trust easily, Mr. McAllister, and I don't forgive betrayal. If you hurt my children, any of them, in any way, I won't. You can't know that. Yes, I can." Eli leaned forward. "Because I know what it feels like to have someone you love destroyed by carelessness and cruelty. I've lived with that weight for 20 years. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy." His voice dropped. "And you, Mrs. Holloway, you're not my enemy. You're my chance. My chance to do something right in this godforsaken world." Maggie felt tears burning her eyes again. She blinked them back. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow we'll reach your ranch. If the weather holds, 5-6 hours. And then we start figuring out how to make this work." Eli smiled faintly. 8 people under one roof. 2 of them ranch hands who've never seen a child up close. One of them a man who's forgotten how to talk to anyone but horses. And one widow who's forgotten how to trust. We're quite a pair. We're not a pair. Maggie stood. We're an arrangement, a business transaction. Don't forget that. I won't. But there was something in Eli's voice that made Maggie pause at the bedroom door. "Mr. McAllister." Eli. Eli. She tasted the name. "Thank you. For what you did today. I won't forget it." "Neither will I." Maggie closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. In the room beyond her, children slept peacefully for the first time in months. She touched the empty space where her wedding ring had been sold months ago to buy bread and wondered if she'd just traded one kind of prison for another. Or if maybe she'd finally found a door that led somewhere else entirely. Outside, the storm began to quiet. Stars emerged between breaking clouds. And in the main room, Eli McAllister sat watching the fire die, thinking about second chances and broken families, and a woman with 7 children who looked at him like he might be either salvation or destruction. He wasn't sure which he was. But tomorrow, he'd start finding out. Dawn broke cold and clear over the Wheeler cabin. Maggie woke to the sound of her children stirring, and for one blessed moment, she forgot where she was. Then yesterday crashed back the auction, the bidding Eli McAllister's gray eyes and $300. She sat up carefully, trying not to wake Sammy. Through the thin walls, she heard voices. Martha Wheeler's warm laughter, Eli's low rumble, her own daughters asking questions. "Mama's awake," Rosie announced from the doorway. "Mr. Eli says we're leaving after breakfast. Mrs. Martha made biscuits." Maggie dressed quickly and carried Sammy into the main room. The sight that greeted her made her stop short. Eli was kneeling by the fire, letting Lily show him a rag doll Martha had given her. The big man listened with solemn attention as the 5-year-old explained each patch and button. Nearby, Lottie was interrogating Silas Wheeler about horses, while Abby watched from the corner, her Bible still clutched like armor. "She's beautiful," Eli said to Lily, his voice gentle. "What's her name?" "She don't have one yet." Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "Mama says names are important. You gotta choose careful." "Your mama's right." Eli glanced up and saw Maggie watching. Something flickered in his expression. Uncertainty, maybe, or hope. "Morning, Mrs. Holloway." "Morning." Maggie moved to help Martha with breakfast. "You didn't have to entertain her." "Wasn't entertainment." Eli stood brushing off his knees. "She came to me. Figured the least I could do was listen." Martha pressed a cup of coffee into Maggie's hands. "He's been like that all morning," she murmured. "Patient as Job with the little ones. Even got your Ellie to stop crying long enough to eat." Maggie looked across the room where Ellie sat with a half-eaten biscuit, her face blotchy, but calm. That was more than Maggie herself had managed in months. "Don't trust it." Abby's voice came from behind her. "Men are always nice at first, then they change." "Abigail." Maggie turned to face her second daughter. "That's enough." "It's the truth." Abby's chin lifted. "Papa was nice at first too. Then he got scared and stopped being nice. Grandfather was nice when we moved in. Then he started drinking and gambling and—" "I said enough." Abby fell silent, but her eyes stayed fixed on Eli with cold suspicion. Breakfast was a chaotic affair, 8 extra mouths taxing even Martha Wheeler's generous hospitality. But the children ate well, color returning to cheeks that had been pale for too long. "Storm's passed," Silas announced from the window. "Road should be clear enough. You'll make the ranch by midday if you start soon." Eli nodded and stood. "Time to go. Everyone bundle up. It's still cold out there." The loading of the wagon took longer with 7 children. Sammy fussed at being wrapped in blankets. Ellie started crying again when she realized they were leaving the warm cabin. Rosie couldn't find one of her mittens. Through it all, Eli remained patient. He found the mitten under a chair. He distracted Sammy with a carved wooden horse from his pocket. He told Ellie that his ranch had a barn cat with new kittens, and her tears dried instantly. "You're good with them," Maggie said as he helped her into the wagon. "Had younger siblings once." His voice went flat. "Long time ago." Before Maggie could ask more, he'd mounted Buck and was leading them out onto the snow-covered road. The journey took 5 hours. Maggie spent most of it watching her children and trying to imagine what waited at the end of the road. A ranch, Eli had said. A house, a barn, some cattle. 2 workers named Rafael and Diego. It didn't sound like much. But then neither had the boarding house in Willow Creek, and that had become a prison. "Mama," Josie's voice came from the driver's bench. "I can see buildings ahead." Maggie sat up and looked. The ranch revealed itself gradually, a house 1-story wood frame with a stone chimney, a large barn, a chicken coop, a bunkhouse set back from the main building. Cattle dotted the snow-covered pastures. It wasn't grand. It wasn't even particularly pretty. But it looked solid, permanent, real. 2 men emerged from the barn as they approached. Both young mid-20s with dark hair and weathered faces. They stopped dead when they saw the wagon full of children. "Boss?" The taller one's voice carried across the yard. "That you?" "It's me, Raphael." Eli dismounted and led Buck toward the barn. "This is Mrs. Holloway and her children. They'll be staying with us." The two men exchanged glances. The shorter one, Diego, stepped forward and pulled off his hat. "Ma'am," he said, "welcome to the McAllister Ranch." "Thank you." Maggie climbed down from the wagon, Sammy in her arms. "I hope we won't be too much trouble." "Trouble?" Diego's face split into a grin. "Ma'am, this place has needed trouble for years. Too quiet around here." "Don't mind my brother," Raphael said. "He talks too much. But he's right. It'll be good to have people around." The children piled out of the wagon, stretching cramped limbs and looking around with wide eyes. Lottie immediately spotted the horses in the corral and started toward them. Rosie was already chattering at Diego about the barn cat Eli had mentioned. Lily clung to Maggie's skirt, thumb and mouth. "I'll show you the house," Eli said. "Raphael, Diego, tend the horses, then come up for coffee. We need to talk about arrangements." The house was cold inside, the hearth empty. Eli moved immediately to the fireplace and began building a fire. "Your room is through there." He nodded toward a doorway on the left. "Only bedroom in the house. It's small, but there's space for the little ones. Older girls can sleep in the loft above." Maggie moved to the doorway and looked in. A bed with a worn quilt, a chest of drawers, a washstand, a window looking out toward the mountains, and in the corner, something that made her breath catch. A large wooden cradle, clearly old but lovingly maintained. Beside it, a smaller trundle bed. And against the wall, two narrow cots that looked newly built, the wood still pale and fresh. "When did you—" Maggie turned to stare at Eli. "These weren't here before." "Built them last night." Eli's voice was carefully neutral. "After we got to the Wheelers. Couldn't sleep anyway. You built 4 beds in one night." 3. "The cradle was my mother's. Been in the barn for 30 years. He still wasn't looking at her. "Figured your boy was too big for it, but the trundle should work for him and the littlest girl. The cots are for the middle ones." Maggie felt something crack inside her chest. This man, this stranger, had spent his sleepless night building beds for children he'd never met, had dragged his dead mother's cradle out of storage, had thought about where each child would sleep before she'd even agreed to come. "Why?" The word came out rough. "Why do you keep doing things like this?" Eli finally looked at her. "Because someone should." Before Maggie could respond, chaos erupted behind her. Lottie had returned from the corral furious. "He wouldn't let me touch the horses," she announced, pointing at Raphael. "Said I was too small." "I said you needed permission first," Raphael corrected calmly. "From your mother or from the boss?" "Can I have permission?" Lottie demanded, turning to Eli. "I know horses. I'm not some stupid city girl who's scared of them." "Charlotte." Maggie's voice held warning. "No, let her speak." Eli studied Lottie with something like respect. "You know horses, do you? Where'd you learn?" "Our farm in Boston, before Papa's business failed and we had to move." Lottie's chin jutted out. "I was the best rider in the county. Ask anyone." "Can't ask anyone. They're not here." Eli moved toward the door. "But I'll tell you what. You come out to the corral tomorrow morning, show me what you can do. If you're as good as you say, you can help with the horses. If not, you stay away from them until you learn proper." Lottie's eyes widened. "You mean it? I don't say things I don't mean." Eli looked at Maggie. "That all right with you, Mrs. Holloway?" Maggie hesitated. Lottie on horseback meant Lottie in danger. But Lottie forbidden from horses meant Lottie sneaking out and doing it anyway, probably worse. "Fine," she said. "But you listen to Mr. McAllister, Charlotte. Every word. Understood?" "Yes, Mama." Lottie's face had transformed. For the first time since William's death, she looked like a child again, excited, hopeful, alive. The afternoon passed in organized chaos. Maggie unpacked what little they had, which was nothing. Josie helped settle the younger children into their new beds. Abby sat in the corner reading her Bible with pointed intensity. Raphael and Diego came in for coffee as promised. They sat at the rough wooden table, hats in their laps, answering Eli's questions about the ranch and stealing glances at the children. "We lost 3 calves in the storm," Raphael reported. "Found them frozen in the north pasture." "Could have been worse," Eli said. "Rest of the herd." "Fine. We moved them to the sheltered grazing before the worst hit." "Good." Eli turned to Maggie. "Mrs. Holloway has agreed to keep house for us. Cooking, cleaning, tending the chickens. Same wages as a ranch hand, $20 a month plus room and board." Raphael and Diego exchanged another glance but said nothing. "Her daughters will help as they're able," Eli continued. "The older ones with household work, the younger ones with whatever tasks suit their ages. They're not servants. They're family." "Family boss." Diego's voice was carefully neutral. "That's what I said." Eli's eyes held a warning. "Anyone has a problem with that arrangement, speak now." Silence. "Good." Eli stood. "Now get back to work. Those fences in the south pasture need mending before the next storm." After the men left, Maggie found herself alone with Eli for the first time since the Wheeler cabin. The children were scattered, Josie organizing the bedroom, Abby reading Lottie, exploring the barn, the younger ones napping after their long journey. "You didn't have to say that," Maggie said quietly. "About us being family. Didn't say it for your benefit." Eli moved to the window, looking out at the empty yard. "Said it for theirs. Raphael and Diego are good men, but they need to understand how things are. Your daughters aren't servants to be ordered around. They're children under my protection." "Your protection." Maggie tasted the words. "And me? Am I under your protection too?" Eli turned to face her. "If you want to be." "What if I don't?" "Then you're a free woman living in my house, working for wages, making her own choices." He paused. "Same as you'd be anywhere else, just with a roof over your head and food in your belly." "That's not the same as anywhere else. Most places a woman alone has no choices at all." "This isn't most places." Eli's voice softened. "And you're not alone. Not anymore." Something shifted between them. Attention and awareness. Maggie looked away first. "I should start dinner," she said. "The children will be hungry. There's supplies in the pantry. Salt pork beans, flour cornmeal. Whatever you need." Maggie moved toward the kitchen area, grateful for the excuse to put distance between them. But Eli's voice stopped her. "Mrs. Holloway." "Yes." "That girl of yours, the 15-year-old, Abigail?" Maggie tensed. "What about her?" "She's scared. More than scared, she's angry. And that anger's pointed at me." Eli's voice held no accusation. "What happened to her? What made her hate men so much?" Maggie was quiet for a long moment. Then, her grandfather. Ezra Holloway. He drank. And when he drank, he said things, did things. Maggie's hands clenched at her sides. Nothing criminal. But he made her feel small. Made all of us feel small. And then when the debts came due and she realized what might happen, she decided all men were monsters. Can you blame her? No. Eli's voice was heavy. I can't blame her at all. But I'd like to prove her wrong. If she'll let me. She won't. Not easily. Then I'll earn it, however long it takes. The first week passed in careful adjustment. Maggie learned the rhythms of the ranch breakfast before dawn, chores throughout the day, dinner as the sun set. She cooked and cleaned and tended the chickens, falling into bed each night exhausted but strangely content. The children adapted at different speeds. Lottie threw herself into ranch work with fierce joy, following Rafael and Diego everywhere, asking endless questions about horses and cattle. Rosie made friends with Diego, immediately charmed by his easy smile and the way he called her Pequeña Rosa, Little Rose. Ellie found the barn cat and its kittens and spent hours in the hayloft, finally peaceful. Lily slowly emerged from behind Maggie's skirts, won over by Eli's patient attention. Sammy toddled around the house, getting into everything, delighted by his new freedom. Josie worked alongside Maggie without complaint, but something in her eyes worried her mother. A distance, a sadness, as if she'd left part of herself behind in that courthouse. And Abby watched everything with cold, suspicious eyes, waiting for the trap to spring. On the 8th day, the trap arrived. But not from where anyone expected. Maggie was kneading bread when she heard horses approaching. Multiple horses moving fast. She wiped flour from her hands and went to the window. 3 riders were crossing the yard. She recognized none of them, but something about the way they moved, aggressive, purposeful, made her stomach clench. "Josie," she called quietly. "Get the children to the bedroom, now." "Mama, what?" "Now, Josephine." Josie moved quickly, gathering siblings and herding them through the bedroom door. Maggie heard her whispering reassurances as she closed it behind her. The lead rider dismounted. He was big, broad-shouldered, with a face that might have been handsome before cruelty settled into its lines. He walked toward the house with the swagger of a man who expected no resistance. Maggie grabbed the rifle from above the fireplace. She didn't know how to use it, not really, but the weight of it in her hands gave her courage. The door opened. "Well now," the stranger smiled, showing yellowed teeth. "You must be the widow, prettier than Wade described." "Get out of my house." Maggie raised the rifle. Her hands were shaking, but she kept her voice steady. "Your house?" The man laughed. "Sweetheart, nothing here is yours. Not the house, not the ranch, not even those brats you've got hiding in the back." He stepped closer. "Wade sent me to deliver a message. You're his property. That auction was a fraud, and the territorial judge agrees. Either you come back to Willow Creek willing, or we take you back by force." The debt was paid. Maggie's finger found the trigger. $300. I saw it counted. Fraud. The man said the word like it was funny. McAllister interfered with legal proceedings. Judge Prescott has issued a warrant for his arrest. And you. His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. You and those pretty daughters of yours belong to Mr. Wade now, especially that eldest one. He's been thinking about her quite a lot. Something snapped in Maggie's chest. Cold, clean fury replaced the fear. "You touch my daughter," she said quietly, "and I'll kill you. I'll kill all of you." The man laughed again. "With that rifle, you can barely hold, sweetheart. You don't even know how to—" The gun went off. Maggie hadn't meant to pull the trigger. Her finger had simply squeezed instinct, overriding thought. The bullet went wide, shattering a window, but the man stumbled backward, shock on his face. "You crazy bitch!" He reached for his pistol. "Touch that gun, and you're dead." Eli's voice came from the doorway. He stood there with his own rifle raised, barrel pointed directly at the stranger's head. Rafael and Diego flanked him, weapons drawn. "Mr. McAllister." The stranger recovered quickly, his hand dropping away from his pistol. "We were just delivering a message from Mr. Wade." "I heard your message." Eli stepped into the house, never lowering his rifle. "Now, here's mine. Wade has no claim on this woman or her children. The debt was paid in full, witnessed by half the town. If he wants to dispute that, he can take it up with the territorial marshal." Judge Prescott says. Judge Prescott is a corrupt drunk who takes bribes from the highest bidder. Eli's voice could have frozen water. Everyone in 3 counties knows it. His warrants aren't worth the paper they're printed on. The stranger's face hardened. "You're making a mistake, McAllister. Wade has friends, powerful friends. You can't protect her forever. Watch me. There's only one of you. Wade can send 20 men next time. 50. Then he'd better send them armed and ready to die. Eli stepped closer, and the stranger actually backed up. Because I've killed men before. Lots of them. In places you can't imagine. And I'll kill as many as it takes to keep this family safe. Something in Eli's voice, a cold certainty, a darkness made even Maggie shiver. This was not the patient man who built beds for children and listened to little girls describe their dolls. This was someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. The stranger saw it too. His bravado cracked just slightly. "This ain't over," he said, but his voice had lost its swagger. "Yes, it is." Eli jerked his head toward the door. "Get out, and tell Wade that if he sends anyone else to threaten this family, I'll come to Willow Creek myself, and I won't be bringing money." The men left. Maggie stood frozen, the rifle still in her hands, her whole body shaking. She heard horses galloping away, heard Diego say something in Spanish, heard Rafael responding. Then Eli was in front of her, gently taking the rifle from her grip. "You did good," he said quietly. "Held your ground, protected your children." "I fired without thinking." Maggie's voice came out strange. "I could have killed him." "You didn't." "But I could have. I wanted to." She looked up at him, something raw in her eyes. "When he talked about Josie, about what Wade wanted, I wanted to kill him. I've never wanted to kill anyone before." "That's not wanting to kill." Eli set the rifle aside. "That's wanting to protect. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." His hand came up, almost touching her face, then dropped. "You're a mother, Maggie. You'd die for those children. You'd kill for them. That doesn't make you a monster. That makes you exactly what they need." Maggie. It was the first time he'd used her name. No Mrs. Holloway, no ma'am. Just Maggie, soft and certain. "How do you know what they need?" Her voice cracked. "Because I remember what I needed. When I was a child, scared and alone, watching my family fall apart." Eli's eyes held old pain. "I needed someone to stand between me and the world. Someone willing to fight, to bleed, to kill if necessary." He paused. "Your children have that. They have you." "I'm not enough." The words tore out of her. "I couldn't protect them from Ezra. I couldn't protect them from Wade. I couldn't even protect them from being sold at auction. What kind of mother lets that happen? The kind who had no power and no choices." Eli's voice hardened. "Don't blame yourself for the cruelty of others, Maggie. Blame the men who did this. Blame the system that allowed it. But don't blame yourself for fighting to survive." Josie's voice came from the bedroom doorway. "Mama, is it safe?" Maggie wiped her eyes quickly. "Yes, sweetheart. It's safe." The children emerged one by one. Rosie was crying. Ellie looked terrified. Even Lottie's bravado had cracked her face pale. Lily ran to Maggie and buried her face in her mother's skirt. Sammy, oblivious as always, toddled toward Eli with his arms raised. "Up," he demanded. "Up, up." Eli hesitated only a moment, then lifted the boy into his arms. Sammy settled against his shoulder with a contented sigh, thumb finding his mouth. "Is the bad man gone?" Rosie asked, her voice small. "Yes, pequeña." Diego had entered behind Eli. "The bad man is gone. Mr. Eli made him leave. Will he come back?" Diego looked at Eli. Eli looked at Maggie. Some communication passed between them, a question, an answer, a promise. "Maybe," Eli said finally. "But if he does, we'll be ready. All of us. Together." That night after the children were asleep, Maggie found Eli on the porch. He sat on the steps looking out at the darkness, a cup of coffee cooling in his hands. "Can I join you?" she asked. He shifted to make room. Maggie sat beside him closer than she would have a week ago. The night was cold, but she didn't go back inside for a coat. "Wade won't stop," she said quietly. "You know that." "I know. He wants Josie, not me, not the debt he wants my 17-year-old daughter." Her voice shook with fury. And he's got the law on his side. Corrupt law bought law, but law all the same. The law isn't everything. Eli's voice was flat. Men like Wade hide behind the law when it suits them, and ignore it when it doesn't. We can do the same. What does that mean? Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then, it means I'm going to kill him. Maggie's breath caught. Eli. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually if he keeps pushing, if he keeps threatening your family. Eli turned to look at her, and his eyes were cold. I told you I've killed men before. I wasn't lying. War does things to a man, shows him what he's capable of, what he's willing to do for the people he stopped, for the people who matter. You can't just murder someone. There'd be consequences. There are always consequences. Eli's voice softened slightly. But there are also limits, lines that can't be crossed. And Wade, what he wants to do to Josie that crosses every line I have. Maggie felt something shift inside her. Not fear, she should have been afraid sitting next to a man who talked about killing so calmly. But she wasn't afraid. She was grateful, relieved, like a weight had lifted from her shoulders. She wasn't alone anymore. Someone else would fight for her children. Someone else would kill for them if necessary. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Eli's voice went rough. I'm not doing this for thanks. Then why? He didn't answer for a long time. The stars wheeled overhead. An owl called somewhere in the darkness. Because you looked at me, he finally said. In that courthouse when I walked in. You looked at me like I might be salvation or destruction, and you didn't know which. And I thought, he paused. I thought maybe this time I could be the salvation. Just this once. You already are. Maggie reached out and touched his hand. His fingers were cold from the coffee cup. To me, to my children. You already are. Eli turned his hand over, letting her fingers rest in his palm. They sat like that for a long moment, connected by something neither of them could name. We should go inside, Maggie said finally. It's cold. Yes. But neither of them moved. Eli. Yes. Those men who came today, they said Wade had powerful friends, that he could send 50 men if he wanted. Maggie's hand tightened on his. What do we do if he does? We fight. Eli's voice was certain. We fight until we can't fight anymore. And if we lose? He paused. We won't lose. How can you be sure? Because I've been waiting my whole life for something worth fighting for. He turned to look at her, and something in his eyes made her heart stutter. And I finally found it. Inside the house, Josie lay awake in the loft, staring at the ceiling. She'd heard everything through the thin walls, the threats, the gunshot, the conversation on the porch. Wade wanted her, specifically her. Not for work or debt or legal obligations, but for something far worse. And Eli McAllister had promised to kill to protect her. Josie didn't know what to do with that. Didn't know how to feel about a stranger willing to commit murder for her safety. Didn't know if she should be grateful or terrified. She touched the small knife hidden under her pillow, a kitchen knife she'd taken that first day, just in case. She'd promised herself she'd use it before she let any man touch her. Use it on them or on herself, whatever became necessary. But maybe now she wouldn't have to. Maybe for the first time in her 17 years, someone else would do the protecting. Josie closed her eyes and let herself imagine a future where that was true. A future where she wasn't a possession to be bought and sold. A future where she could grow up, fall in love, make her own choices. It seemed impossible. Like a dream. But then, so had everything else since that day in the courthouse. And dreams Josie was learning sometimes came true. 2 weeks passed without incident. The silence should have been comforting, but Maggie knew better. Wade wasn't the kind of man who gave up. He was the kind who waited, planned, gathered strength for a final blow. She threw herself into work, trying to outrun the fear. The house transformed under her hands, scrubbed floors, mended curtains, organized pantry. She cooked meals that left Rafael and Diego fighting over second helpings. She established routines that gave the children structure and purpose. And every night, she lay awake listening for hoofbeats. "You're working yourself to death," Eli said one morning, watching her knead bread with more force than necessary. "The floor doesn't need scrubbing again. You did it yesterday." "Idle hands," Maggie replied shortly, "are not the devil's workshop. They're just hands that need rest." Eli moved closer. "Talk to me, Maggie. What's eating at you?" "You know what's eating at me. Wade. Wade, the law. The fact that any day, any moment, he could come back with 50 men like his lackey threatened." Maggie's hands stilled in the dough. "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see that courthouse. I see men bidding on my daughter like she was livestock." "That's not going to happen again." "You can't promise that." "I can." Eli's voice hardened. "I will." "How?" Maggie turned to face him, flour on her hands, desperation in her eyes. "How can you promise something you can't control? Wade has money. He has the judge in his pocket. He has men willing to do whatever he pays them to do. What do we have? A ranch 20 miles from nowhere and 4 guns between us." Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We have something Wade will never have." "What?" "Something worth fighting for." He held her gaze. "Wade fights for greed, for possession, for the pleasure of breaking things. We fight for family, for love, for each other." His voice dropped. "That difference matters, Maggie. It matters more than money or guns or corrupt judges." "You sound like a preacher." "Maybe." A faint smile touched his lips. "My stepmother used to say that faith moves mountains. I didn't believe her then. I believe her now." "Faith in what, God?" "In people." Eli stepped closer. "In you. In your children. In Rafael and Diego, who'd die before they let anyone hurt this family. In the neighbors who will stand with us when the time comes." He paused. "Faith in the idea that good can win, even when everything says it can't." Maggie wanted to believe him. God help her, she wanted to believe. "Mama," Rosie's voice came from the doorway. "Abby's crying again. She won't tell me why." Maggie wiped her hands and went to find her second daughter. She found Abby in the barn loft, curled in the hay, with the barn cat's kittens, tears streaming down her face. The Bible lay open beside her pages, damp. "Abigail." Maggie climbed the ladder and settled beside her. "What's wrong?" "Everything." Abby's voice was thick. "Everything's wrong, and nobody will admit it." "What do you mean, him?" The word came out like a curse. "Mr. McAllister. Everyone acts like he's some kind of saint, but he's not. He's just like all the others. He's going to hurt us eventually. They always do." "Has he done something?" Maggie's voice sharpened. "Said something touched you in any way?" "No." Abby's face crumpled further. "That's what I mean. He hasn't done anything. He's patient and kind, and he built beds for us, and he plays with Sammy, and he's teaching Lottie to ride, and everyone loves him, and it's not real." "Why can't it be real?" "Because nothing good is ever real." Abby's voice rose. "Papa was good at first, and then he got scared and stopped caring. Grandfather was good at first, and then he started drinking and said terrible things. Every man who ever seemed good turned out to be something else. Why should Mr. McAllister be different?" Maggie pulled her daughter close. "Maybe he won't be." Abby stiffened. "What? Maybe you're right. Maybe he'll change. Maybe he'll hurt us." Maggie stroked her daughter's hair. "I can't promise he won't, sweetheart. I learned a long time ago not to promise things I can't control." "Then why are we here? Why did you bring us to live with him?" "Because the alternative was worse." Maggie's voice went flat. "You know what Wade wanted, Abby. You heard what his man said. At least with Eli we have a chance. With Wade, we had none. A chance for what? A chance to be wrong. Maggie pulled back and looked at her daughter. A chance to find out that not all men are like Papa or Grandfather. A chance to learn that sometimes good things are actually real. And if we're not wrong, if he turns out to be just like them, then we leave. Maggie's voice hardened. We take whatever we can carry and we run. I've done it before. I can do it again. Promise. I promise. Maggie kissed her forehead. But Abby, give him a chance. Not for his sake, for yours. Carrying all that suspicion, all that fear, it's heavy, sweetheart. It'll crush you if you let it. Abby was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, He gave me a book yesterday. What? A book. Poetry. He said he noticed I was always reading the same Bible verses over and over, and maybe I'd like something different. Abby's voice trembled. He didn't make me take it. Just left it on my bed and walked away. Did you read it? A little. Abby wiped her eyes. It was beautiful. That doesn't sound like a monster. No. Abby's voice was small. It doesn't. That evening, Eli found Abby sitting on the porch steps, the poetry book in her lap. He hesitated, then sat down beside her, not too close, careful to maintain distance. You're reading it, he said quietly. You left it for me. I did. He looked out at the darkening sky. My stepmother loved poetry. Said it was like music for the soul. When I'm feeling lost, I read her favorite verses. Helps remind me who I want to be. Abby was quiet for a long moment. Then, Mama says you had a stepmother, that she died. She did. How? Pneumonia, in a boarding house in Denver. Eli's voice went flat. She'd been turned out of her home by my father's brother. Had nothing. No money, no family, no help. Took in laundry to survive. Worked herself to death within a year. Like Mama almost did, at Mrs. Patterson's. Yes. Eli finally looked at her. That's why I did what I did, Abby. Not for reward or gratitude or anything I want from your family. Because I couldn't save Hannah, and I've spent 20 years wishing I could. When I heard about your mother and sisters at that auction. He stopped. I saw Hannah. I saw myself powerless to help. And I thought, not this time. This time I can do something. But you don't know us. I didn't need to know you. I knew what you were facing. That was enough. Abby turned the book over in her hands. This was your stepmother's, her favorite. I've had it for 20 years. Eli paused. I thought maybe you'd take better care of it than I have. I can't keep this. Abby tried to hand it back. It's too precious. That's exactly why I want you to have it. Eli closed her fingers around the book. Precious things should be shared, Abby. Otherwise, they just gather dust. Abby looked down at the book, then up at Eli. Something shifted in her expression, not trust, not yet, but something close. An opening, a possibility. Thank you, she whispered. You're welcome. 3 days later, everything changed. Maggie was hanging laundry when she heard horses. Not the aggressive thunder of Wade's men, but a single rider approaching slowly. She dropped the sheet and ran for the house, hand reaching for the rifle. But Eli was already on the porch, and his posture wasn't defensive. It was welcoming. It's all right, he called. I know him. The rider came into view. A man in his 40s, weathered face, tin star on his chest. He dismounted with the ease of someone who'd spent a lifetime in the saddle. Eli McAllister. The man's voice was rough, but not unfriendly. Heard you'd gotten yourself into trouble. Marshall Crawford. Eli stepped off the porch and shook the man's hand. Trouble's been my middle name lately. What brings you out here? Got some questions about Cornelius Wade. The marshal's eyes swept across the yard, landing on Maggie. Ma'am, you'd be the widow from that auction. Margaret Holloway. Maggie's voice was steady. What do you want to know? Everything. Marshall Crawford looked back at Eli. Inside might be better. What I've got to say isn't for young ears. They gathered in the kitchen, Eli, Maggie, and the marshal. Josie tried to stay, but Maggie sent her to watch the younger children. This conversation wasn't for 17-year-olds either. Wade's made complaints, Marshall Crawford began. Says you interfered with legal proceedings. Says you kidnapped this woman and her children. The debt was paid, Eli said flatly. $300 counted by Judge Prescott himself. Prescott's been relieved of his position. The marshal's voice was grim. Arrested yesterday on corruption charges. Half a dozen complaints finally stuck. He's facing trial in Denver. Maggie's breath caught. What does that mean for us? Means his rulings are being reviewed, including the one about your family. The marshal leaned forward. Here's the thing, Mrs. Holloway. Wade's claim on you was always shaky. Dependents of an estate can't legally be sold to satisfy debts that's been territorial law for years. Prescott ignored it because Wade paid him to. So we're free. Maggie could barely breathe. Legally completely free. Not quite. The marshal's face darkened. Wade's not giving up. He's filed new paperwork claims you stole property from your father-in-law's estate before fleeing to Colorado. Claims that invalidates any settlement because you owe restitution for theft. That's a lie. Maggie's voice shook with fury. I took nothing. My children and I left with the clothes on our backs. Can you prove it? How can I prove I didn't take something that never existed? The marshal sighed. That's the problem with men like Wade. They don't need truth. They just need enough paperwork to tie you up in courts for years. And while those cases drag on, you're in legal limbo. No rights, no protections. There has to be something we can do, Eli said. There is. The marshal hesitated. But you're not going to like it. Tell me anyway. If Mrs. Holloway were to remarry quickly to a man with legal standing in the territory, her status would change. She'd no longer be a dependent of the Holloway estate. She'd be a married woman under her husband's protection. Wade's claims would become much harder to pursue. Silence fell over the kitchen. Maggie felt the blood drain from her face. You're suggesting I marry someone, anyone, just to escape Wade? I'm suggesting you consider your options. The marshal's voice was gentle. Marriage ain't ideal when it's done for protection rather than love, but it's better than the alternative. Eli hadn't moved. His face was completely blank. How long do we have? Maggie asked. Before Wade's new claims go through. A week. Maybe 2. He's been greasing palms in Denver trying to get expedited processing. The marshal stood. I'm sorry I don't have better news, ma'am. I came here hoping to help, but the law is the law, even when it's used as a weapon. After the marshal left, Maggie sat at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. Eli stood by the window, still silent. You could do it, Maggie finally said. Marry me, I mean, if you wanted to. Eli didn't turn around. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want. Maggie's voice cracked. I know what I don't want. I don't want to lose my children. I don't want Josie dragged off to be Wade's. She couldn't finish. Then we do it. Eli turned to face her. We get married, tonight if we have to. Just like that. Just like that. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her chair. Maggie, listen to me. I was going to wait. I was going to give you time, let you settle in, let you learn to trust me. I had this whole plan, months, maybe years of proving myself before I even brought up the possibility. Maggie's heart stuttered. The possibility of what? Of this. Eli took her hands. Of us. I know you don't love me. I know you might never love me. But He stopped, something raw in his face. I've loved you since that first night at the Wheelers, when you sat across from me and demanded to know what I wanted. When you looked at me like I was either salvation or destruction and you were trying to figure out which. Eli, let me finish. His grip tightened. I wasn't going to say anything. Not until you were ready. Maybe not ever, if you never became ready. But now... He laughed bitterly. Now Wade's forced my hand. And I need you to know that if you say yes, it won't be a convenience for me. It won't be strategy or protection or legal maneuvering. It will be real. How can you love someone you've known for 3 weeks? How can I not? Eli's eyes blazed. You're the strongest woman I've ever met. You stood on that auction block holding your daughter and you didn't break. You fired a gun at a man threatening your family and you didn't flinch. You work 16 hours a day and still find time to comfort your children, to teach them to love them. He paused. How could I know all that and not fall in love with you? Maggie felt tears burning her eyes. I can't promise to love you back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I know. This might be a disaster. We might destroy each other. We might. Eli raised her hands to his lips. Or we might build something worth having. Something real. Something lasting. You're asking me to take an enormous risk. I'm asking you to trust me. Just this once. Just enough to try. Maggie looked at him, at this man who'd spent his savings to save her family, who'd built beds for her children, who'd promised to kill, to protect them. At this stranger who somehow felt less like a stranger every day. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Not because I have to. Because... She searched for the right words. Because you're the first man in my life who's asked what I want instead of telling me. Eli pulled her close. She felt his heart pounding against her chest, fast and hard, belying his calm exterior. I'll send Diego for Reverend Morrison tonight, he said against her hair. We can be married by morning. The children will be fine, more than fine. He pulled back and looked at her. They'll have a father, a real one. Not a stepfather in name only, but someone who loves them, who'll die for them. You'd do that? Love them like your own? I already do. Eli's voice was rough. Sammy calls me L.I. and climbs into my lap every evening? Lily showed me her doll's new name yesterday. She named it Hope. Rosie sings to me while I work. Even Lottie, stubborn, fierce Lottie, she smiled at me last week. A real smile, not a challenge. And Abby. Abby's reading the poetry book, every night by candlelight. Eli smiled faintly. She's not there yet, but she's trying. That's more than I could have hoped. Josie doesn't trust you. No. Eli's face sobered. Josie carries weight that no 17-year-old should carry. She's been mother and protector and warrior all at once. She doesn't know how to let someone else share that burden. Can you reach her? I don't know, but I'll try. Every day for the rest of my life if necessary. Maggie touched his face. Her fingers traced the lines around his eyes, the stubble on his jaw, the small scar above his left eyebrow. What happened here? She asked, touching the scar. Shrapnel. Battle of Chickamauga. His voice went flat. Worst day of my life. Lost half my regiment. Spent 2 weeks in a field hospital, sure I was going to die. The war changed you. The war made me. Eli covered her hand with his. Made me understand what matters and what doesn't. Made me swear I'd never let fear stop me from doing what's right. He paused. Made me the man who walked into that courthouse. I'm glad you did. Maggie's voice was thick. I'm glad you walked in. I'm glad you bid. I'm glad you're here. So am I. They stood like that for a long moment, forehead to forehead, breathing the same air. Not quite a kiss. Something deeper. I should tell the children, Maggie finally said. Together, Eli said. We tell them together. They gathered everyone in the main room, 7 children ranging from 17 to 3, plus Raphael and Diego, who stood awkwardly by the door. We have news, Maggie began. You're getting married, Josie said flatly. Aren't you? Maggie blinked. How did you? I heard the marshal. I know what's happening with Wade. Josie's voice was hard. And I know there's only one way to stop him legally. Josie. It's fine. Josie's chin lifted. It makes sense. It's practical. I'm not a child, Mama. I understand how the world works. It's not just practical. Eli stepped forward. I love your mother, Josie. I've loved her since the first night I met her. This isn't strategy. It's a choice I would have made eventually anyway. Eventually? Josie's voice dripped skepticism. How convenient that eventually happens to be now, when it's legally necessary. Josie. Maggie's voice held warning. No, let her speak. Eli moved closer to Josie. You're right to be suspicious. The timing is convenient. Too convenient. If I were in your position, I'd question it too. Then prove it's real. Josie's eyes blazed. Prove you actually love her, and this isn't just some scheme to what? Eli's voice was gentle. What do you think I want from your mother that I couldn't get without marriage? Josie's face reddened. Men always want something. Yes, we do. Eli didn't flinch. I want a family. I want to come home to people who care if I live or die. I want to watch your sisters grow up, help your brother learn to ride, see your mother smile without fear behind it. He paused. Is that wrong? I don't know. Josie's voice cracked. I don't know what's wrong anymore. Everything's happening so fast. It is. Eli reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. He rested his hand on her shoulder. And I know you're scared. I know you've spent your whole life protecting this family, and now some stranger is trying to step into a role that should have been your father's. That's not fair to you. Josie's eyes filled with tears. I just want them to be safe. I know. Eli's voice was rough. That's all I want too. And if you'll let me, I'll spend every day for the rest of my life trying to make sure they are. All of them, including you. Even if I never trust you. Even then. Josie studied his face for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. All right, she whispered. Marry her. Protect them. But know this, if you ever hurt her, hurt any of them, I'll kill you myself. I don't care if you're bigger than me, or stronger, or... I know. Eli smiled faintly. I saw you take that kitchen knife the first day. You've kept it under your pillow ever since. Josie's face went white. How did you... I check on all the children every night, make sure they're sleeping safe. Eli's voice softened. I never moved it, never took it from you, because I understood why you needed it. Something broke in Josie's expression. Not trust not yet, but the first crack in a wall that had been building for months. You're very strange, she said finally. For a man. So I've been told. Diego cleared his throat. Boss, should I ride for the Reverend? Eli looked at Maggie. She nodded. Go, he said. Tell Reverend Morrison we need a wedding, tonight. Reverend Morrison arrived 3 hours later, snow dusting his shoulders and concern creasing his weathered face. He'd known Eli for years, had buried Eli's father, and prayed over Hannah's memory. When Diego told him what was needed, he'd saddled his horse without question. This is irregular, he said, stepping into the warm house. Marriage should be entered into with prayer and preparation, not midnight urgency. We don't have time for preparation. Eli helped the Reverend remove his coat. Wade's men could be here any day. The Marshal says marriage is our only legal protection. Marshal Crawford told me. Reverend Morrison's eyes found Maggie across the room. Mrs. Holloway, is this truly what you want? I won't perform a ceremony where either party is coerced. I'm not coerced. Maggie stepped forward, her voice steady. I'm choosing. There's a difference. Is there? When the alternative is so dire, there's always a difference between choosing and being forced. Maggie met the Reverend's gaze. Eli asked me. He didn't demand. He didn't assume. He asked, and he gave me time to answer. That makes it a choice. Reverend Morrison studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Very well. Who will stand as witnesses? We will, Raphael said. He and Diego moved to stand near the fireplace. Gladly. The children gathered in a semicircle, Josie holding Sammy Abby, with her arm around Lily Lottie, standing protectively near Ellie and Rosie. 7 young faces watching their mother prepare to marry a man they'd known for barely a month. Before we begin, Reverend Morrison said, I must ask the children, do any of you object to this union? Silence. Then Rosie's small voice, does this mean Mr. Eli will be our papa? If you want him to be, Maggie said softly. I want him to be. Rosie's face split into a smile. He tells good stories, and he doesn't yell. Lottie. Reverend Morrison turned to the fierce 13-year-old. You've been the most reluctant to accept Mr. McAllister. What say you? Lottie's jaw worked. She glanced at Eli, then at her mother, then back at the Reverend. He keeps his promises, she said finally. Said he'd teach me to ride proper, and he did. Said he'd protect us, and he has. She paused. I reckon that's more than most men do. Abigail? Abby clutched her poetry book she'd taken to carrying it everywhere. I don't trust men, she said quietly. But I'm trying to trust him. Mama says that's enough for now. It is enough. Reverend Morrison's voice softened. Trust is built slowly, child. The fact that you're trying speaks well of you both. Josephine. Josie's face was pale, but composed. My mother deserves to be happy. If Mr. McAllister can make her happy. Her voice caught. Then I won't stand in the way. That's not what I asked. I asked if you object. No. The word came out rough. I don't object. Reverend Morrison nodded and opened his worn Bible. Then let us begin. The ceremony was simple. No flowers, no fancy dress, no guests beyond the household. Just 2 people standing before God and family making promises they intended to keep. Do you, Elijah Nathaniel McAllister, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death do you part? I do. Eli's voice was steady, his eyes never leaving Maggie's face. And do you, Margaret Catherine Holloway, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part? Maggie felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Everything she'd been, everything she'd suffered, everything she feared, it all led to this, one word that would change everything. I do. The ring. Eli reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. It was my mother's, he said quietly. She gave it to my father on their wedding day. He gave it to Hannah when they married. Hannah gave it to me before she died. His voice roughened. She made me promise I'd give it to someone who deserved it, someone worth loving. He slipped the ring onto Maggie's finger. It fit perfectly. By the power vested in me by God and the territory of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Reverend Morrison smiled. You may kiss your bride. Eli cupped Maggie's face in his hands. The kiss was gentle, almost tentative, a question rather than a claim. Maggie found herself leaning into it, answering the question with her own. When they parted, Rosie was clapping, Diego was grinning. Even Josie's expression had softened slightly. Congratulations. Reverend Morrison shook Eli's hand and kissed Maggie's cheek. May God bless this union and all who shelter under its protection. After the Reverend left after the children were settled in bed after Raphael and Diego retreated to the bunkhouse, Maggie and Eli stood alone in the main room. Husband and wife. Strangers bound by law and desperation and something that might with time become love. I should sleep in the barn, Eli said. Give you privacy. No. Maggie caught his hand. We're married now. If Wade's men come, if anyone asks questions, we need to be believable. That means sharing a house, sharing a room. Maggie, I'm not suggesting anything improper. Her voice was firm. Just stay. Sleep by the fire if you want. But stay in the house. Stay where I can see you. Eli studied her face. Are you afraid? Terrified. The word came out raw. But not of you. Never of you. What then? That this won't be enough. That Wade will find some other way. That everything we've done, the wedding, the legal protection, none of it will matter. Maggie's voice cracked. I've lost so much, Eli. I can't lose again. You won't. Eli pulled her close. Whatever comes, we face it together. That's what marriage means. Is it I barely remember what marriage means anymore? Then we'll figure it out, together. He kissed her forehead. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. How do you know? Because Wade just lost his legal leverage. Men like him don't take losses well. Eli's voice hardened. He'll come himself this time, with everything he has. Maggie didn't sleep that night. She lay in the bed that was now legally hers, in the house, that was now legally hers, wearing a ring that carried 3 generations of hope, and she waited for dawn. It came slowly, gray light seeping through the window, birds beginning to sing. She heard Eli moving in the main room, stoking the fire, starting coffee. The sounds of a household waking up. She rose and dressed, then went to check on the children. Sammy was awake, chattering to himself in his trundle bed. Lily was still asleep, thumb in mouth. In the loft, the older girls were stirring. Mama. Josie's voice came from above. Is it true? Are you really married now? It's true. Does that make us McAllisters? Maggie hadn't considered that. I suppose it does, if you want to be. Margaret McAllister. Josie tested the name. Josephine McAllister. It sounds strange. It'll feel less strange with time. Breakfast was chaotic, 9 people crowding around a table built for 4. But the chaos felt different now. Warmer. Like a family should feel. Rafael Diego, Eli said as they finished eating. I need you to ride the property today. Check all the approaches, note any signs of recent passage. If Wade's coming, I want to know from which direction. You think he'll come today? Rafael asked. I think he'll come soon. The wedding will have made him angry. Angry men make mistakes. Or they make big moves. That too. Eli's jaw tightened. Keep the children close to the house, Maggie. Don't let them wander. I won't. Maggie's hand found his under the table. Be careful. Always. The morning passed quietly. Maggie kept the children occupied with chores, Josie helping with laundry, Abby reading to the younger ones, Lottie cleaning the chicken coop under protest. The normalcy felt fragile, like glass about to shatter. It shattered at noon. Diego came riding hard from the north, his horse lathered and wild-eyed. He barely stopped before throwing himself from the saddle. They're coming, he gasped. 20 men, maybe more. Wade's leading them himself. Maggie's blood went cold. How far? An hour, maybe less. Eli emerged from the barn, rifle in hand. His face was calm, but Maggie could see the tension in his shoulders. Get the children inside, he said. Bar the doors. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Eli. Do it, Maggie. His voice was steel. Let me handle this. You can't fight 20 men. You'll die. Maybe. Eli loaded his rifle with steady hands. But they'll know they've been in a fight. No. Maggie grabbed his arm. There has to be another way. We could run. Run where they'd track us. Hunt us down. No. Eli shook his head. This ends here. Today. Then I'm fighting too. Like hell you are. I'm your wife now. Maggie's chin lifted. You don't get to make decisions for me anymore. This isn't about decisions. This is about survival. Those children need their mother. If you fall, I fall with you. Maggie's voice hardened. I won't be a widow again, Eli. I won't stand by and watch another man She stopped, surprised by what she'd almost said. Eli's expression shifted. Another man you what? Another man I care about. The words came out rough. Another man who matters to me. Maggie, don't. She pulled the rifle from the rack above the fireplace. Just tell me what to do. For a moment, Eli just stared at her. Then something changed in his face, acceptance maybe, or respect. Can you shoot? I fired at Wade's man. Missed by a mile, but I can shoot. Then take position at the east window. Raphael will cover the west. Diego takes the barn. I'll be on the porch. And the children? Josie can handle a rifle. I've seen her watching when I clean mine. Put her at the back door. Anyone comes through who isn't us, she shoots. Maggie nodded and ran inside. The children were gathered in the main room, faces pale with fear. Mama? Rosie's voice trembled. What's happening? Bad men are coming. Maggie kept her voice calm. But we're going to be ready for them. Are they going to hurt us? Lily started crying. No, sweetheart. Maggie gathered the youngest children and herded them toward the bedroom. You're going to stay in here with Abby. No matter what you hear, you stay quiet and you stay hidden. Understand? Abby took Lily's hand, her face white but determined. I'll keep them safe, Mama. I know you will. Maggie kissed her forehead. Read them stories. Keep them calm. Mama. Sammy didn't understand what was happening, but he sensed the fear. Mama's scared. Mama's fine, sweetheart. Maggie forced a smile. Mama's going to make the bad men go away. She closed the bedroom door and turned to find Josie standing in the main room, rifle in hand. Mr. Eli taught me how to load it, Josie said quietly. Last week, when you weren't looking. He did he? He said every woman should know how to defend herself. Josie's grip on the rifle was steady. I'm not letting anyone through that door, Mama. Not while I'm breathing. I know you won't. Maggie touched her daughter's face. I'm so proud of you, Josie. You know that. I know. Josie's voice cracked. I love you, Mama. I love you too. They took their positions. Maggie at the east window, Raphael at the west. Josie at the back door. Diego in the barn, with a clear line of fire across the yard. Eli on the porch, standing like a man who'd already made peace with death. They waited. The riders came over the ridge 30 minutes later. Maggie counted 18 men, close to Diego's estimate. Wade rode at the front on a black horse, his face twisted with rage. McAllister, Wade's voice carried across the yard. Come out and face me. Eli stepped off the porch, rifle loose in his hands. I'm here, Wade. What do you want? You know what I want. Wade dismounted. That woman and her daughters. They're mine by legal right. Your legal right was fraud and everyone knows it. Judge Prescott is in prison. His rulings are void. I've got new paperwork. Wade pulled a folded document from his coat. Theft charges against Margaret Holloway, signed by a real judge this time. She comes with me to face trial, or I take her by force. She's not going anywhere. Eli's voice was calm. She's my wife now. Whatever claims you had on the Holloway estate don't apply to her anymore. Wade's face went purple. Your wife? You married that whore? Watch your mouth, or what you'll shoot me. Wade laughed. Look around, McAllister. I've got 18 men. You've got, 2 ranch hands and a woman who can't aim. I've got more than that. Eli's voice hardened. I've got something worth dying for. Do your men have that? Wade's smile faltered slightly. His men shifted in their saddles, exchanging glances. Let's not make this complicated, Wade said. Hand her over. Hand the daughters over. Walk away clean. Nobody has to die today. You're right. Eli raised his rifle. Nobody has to, but somebody probably will. Question is, are you willing to be first? You'd shoot an unarmed man. You're not unarmed. Eli nodded toward Wade's hip. I can see your pistol from here. This is ridiculous. Wade turned to his men. Take him. Take the house. Kill anyone who resists. Nobody moved. I said take him. Mr. Wade. One of the men, older, gray-bearded, cleared his throat. You said this was a legal matter. You said we were serving papers, not starting a war. It is a legal matter. That woman is a thief, and she's a widow with 7 children. The man's voice hardened. And McAllister there is a war veteran who fought at Chickamauga. You want us to storm his house, kill his family for what? A debt that might or might not be legal. I'm paying you. Not enough for this. The man turned his horse. I signed on for legal work, not massacre. I'm out. You're a coward. Maybe, but I'll sleep tonight. He rode away without looking back. 2 more men followed, then 3 more. Wade's face twisted with fury as he watched his force dwindle. Cowards all of you. I'll see you ruined. It's over, Wade. Eli's voice was quiet. Go home. Let this go. Find some other woman to terrorize. Never. Wade's hand moved toward his pistol. If I can't have her, no one will. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. Wade drew. Eli fired. The bullet took Wade in the shoulder, spinning him around. Before he could recover, Eli had crossed the yard and kicked the pistol from his hand. I could have killed you. Eli stood over Wade's rifle pointed at his head. I chose not to. Remember that. You're a dead man, McAllister. Wade clutched his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. I've got friends, important friends. They'll do nothing. A new voice cut through the tension. Marshal Crawford rode into the yard, a dozen men behind him. Cornelius Wade, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted kidnapping. Marshal, this man shot me. In self-defense from what I saw. Marshal Crawford dismounted. I've been following your little army for 2 hours, Wade. Heard everything you said. Heard you order your men to kill anyone who resisted. He pulled out handcuffs. That's attempted murder on top of everything else. Wade's face went white. You can't do this. I have rights. I have lawyers. You have nothing. Marshal Crawford yanked Wade to his feet. Not anymore. As the marshal's men secured Wade and rounded up the remaining hired guns, Maggie emerged from the house. She walked across the yard past the horses and the chaos until she reached Eli's side. It's over. Her voice was barely a whisper. It's over. Eli's arm came around her shoulders. He can't hurt you anymore. Can't hurt any of you. Maggie's knees buckled. Eli caught her, held her up, held her close. I thought you were going to die. She was shaking now, all the terror she'd suppressed flooding through her. I thought I was going to watch you die. I'm not that easy to kill. Eli's voice was rough. Ask the Confederates at Chickamauga. That's not funny. It's a little funny. Maggie pulled back and looked at him. His face was calm, but she could see the exhaustion underneath the aftermath of violence that never fully faded. You saved us, she said. Again. We saved each other. Eli glanced at the house. Where are the children? Inside. Josie was guarding the back door with a rifle. Good girl. Pride flickered in Eli's eyes. That one's going to be fine. All of them are going to be fine. Marshal Crawford approached Wade, secured on a horse behind him. Mrs. McAllister, he tipped his hat. Your family is safe. I'll make sure Wade never bothers you again. How can you be sure? Because I've been investigating him for 2 years. The marshal's voice went grim. That woman he made disappear last year, we found the body, hidden on his property. He paused. Wade's going to hang Ma'am. For murder, if nothing else. Maggie felt something release inside her. A fear she'd carried so long she'd forgotten it was there. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank your husband." Marshal Crawford nodded at Eli. "If he hadn't stood his ground, Wade would have taken you before we arrived. Brave thing facing down 20 men. It wasn't bravery. Eli's arm tightened around Maggie. It was necessity. After the marshal left, after the hired guns were taken away, after the yard was empty except for family, the children emerged from the house. Sammy ran straight to Eli, arms raised. "Up, up, Eli." Eli lifted the boy and settled him on his hip. "Hey, little man, were you brave?" "Brave," Sammy agreed, though he'd spent the confrontation playing with blocks while Abby distracted him. Lily tugged at Maggie's skirt. "Mama, are the bad men gone?" "Yes, sweetheart. The bad men are gone forever. Because Papa Eli made them go." Maggie's breath caught. Lily had never called Eli Papa before. She looked at Eli, whose face had gone completely still. "Yes," Maggie said softly. "Because Papa Eli made them go." Eli didn't speak. He just pulled Lily close with his free arm, holding both children against him, and bowed his head. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. Rosie pushed forward. "Can I call you Papa too?" "Me too," Ellie added. "If you want to." Eli's voice was hoarse. "If that's what you want." "I want to." Rosie threw her arms around his legs. "You're the best, Papa. Way better than the old one." "Rosemary," Maggie's voice held warning. "It's true. The old Papa was scared all the time. Papa Eli isn't scared of anything." Eli knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with the children gathered around him. "That's not true, Rosie. I'm scared of lots of things." "Like what?" "Like losing you." Eli's voice was quiet. "Like not being good enough to deserve you. Like waking up one day and finding out this was all a dream." "That's silly." Rosie touched his face. "You can't dream this much. Dreams don't have chickens." Despite everything, the terror, the violence, the years of fear, Maggie laughed. A real laugh, full and free, the first she'd managed in longer than she could remember. Eli looked up at her, surprise and wonder in his eyes. And then he was laughing too, and the children were laughing, even Josie, even Abby. All of them standing in the yard where they'd nearly died, laughing at the absurdity and beauty of being alive. Later that evening, after the younger children were in bed, after Raphael and Diego had shared a celebratory drink and retired to the bunkhouse, Maggie found Josie on the porch. Her eldest daughter sat on the steps, staring at the stars. The rifle was gone, replaced by her hands clasped in her lap. "Are you all right?" Maggie sat beside her. "I don't know." Josie's voice was distant. "I was ready to kill someone today. I was standing at that door, and I was ready to shoot whoever came through. And I didn't feel scared. I felt calm. That's how it works sometimes, when you're protecting people you love. Is that normal? I don't know what normal is anymore." Maggie put her arm around her daughter. "But I know you're strong, stronger than you should have to be." "I don't feel strong," Josie's voice cracked. "I feel tired, Mama. So tired." "I know, sweetheart. Do I have to keep being strong? Now that he's here, now that Wade's gone, can I just be me for a while?" "You can be whatever you want to be." Maggie held her close. "That's what this was all for, so you could have choices, real choices. I want to learn to read better, like Abby." Josie's words came out in a rush. "I want to learn to play piano if we ever get one. I want to wear pretty dresses and go to dances and maybe someday fall in love with someone who isn't chosen for me." Her voice broke. "I want to be 17, Mama. I haven't been 17 in so long." "Then be 17. Maggie kissed her hair. "Let Eli and me do the protecting for a while. You've earned a rest." The door opened behind them. Eli stood there, uncertain, not wanting to intrude. "I'm going to check the horses," he said. "Just wanted to let you know." "Wait." Josie stood up. She walked to Eli, stopped in front of him, and looked up at his face. Thank you. For what? For standing out there, for not running. Josie's voice steadied. For being willing to die for people you barely know. I know you well enough. Eli's voice was quiet. And I'd do it again. Every day for the rest of my life. Josie studied him for a long moment. Then slowly, she did something she'd never done before. She hugged him. It was brief, awkward, more collision than embrace, but it was real. And when she pulled back, something had changed in her eyes. Good night, Papa Eli, she said softly. Then she disappeared into the house, leaving Eli staring after her, his face transformed by wonder. She called me Papa. His voice was barely audible. She actually called me Papa. She did. Maggie rose and went to him. You earned it, today and every day before. I didn't earn anything. You just loved them. Maggie took his hand. That's all it takes, Eli. That's all it's ever taken. They stood together, husband and wife, watching the stars wheel overhead. Behind them, their children slept safe and warm. Ahead of them stretched years of possibility. Hard years, maybe, but years they would face together. Maggie. Eli's voice was soft. Yes. I think I'm going to like being married to you. I think I'm going to like it too. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Eventually. Eventually. He laughed quietly. I can wait. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. Neither am I. Eli kissed the top of her head. Neither am I. Spring came slowly to the Colorado mountains. Snow melted in patches, revealing brown grass and stubborn wildflowers. The ranch transformed from a place of survival into something softer, a home that breathed and grew with the family inside it. Maggie noticed the changes in small ways. Eli laughing at Diego's jokes instead of just nodding. Lottie racing Raphael across the pasture on horseback, her hair streaming behind her. Abby reading poetry aloud at dinner, her voice growing stronger each time. Rosie singing while she collected eggs, filling the morning air with melodies she invented herself. But the biggest change was in Maggie herself. She woke one April morning and realized she wasn't afraid. For the first time in years, maybe the first time ever, she opened her eyes without dread. No wondering what disaster the day would bring. No calculating how to protect her children from the next threat. Just peace. You're smiling, Eli said from the doorway. He'd been up for hours, she knew. The man rose before dawn, no matter how late he'd stayed awake. Am I? Like you just remembered something good. He crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. Want to share? I was thinking about how strange this is. Maggie sat up, pulling the quilt around her shoulders. Waking up happy. I'd forgotten what it felt like. Good strange or bad strange? Good. She reached for his hand. Definitely good. They'd been married for 3 months now. 3 months of learning each other's rhythms, each other's silences, each other's unspoken needs. Eli still slept by the fire most nights. Maggie hadn't invited him into the bed and he hadn't asked, but they'd found other intimacies. Morning coffee shared in comfortable quiet. Evening walks when the children were asleep. Conversations that lasted until the fire burned low. I need to ride to town today, Eli said. Supplies are running low and I want to check with Marshall Crawford about Wade's trial. Can I come? Eli's eyebrows rose. You want to go to Willow Creek after everything that happened there? That's exactly why I want to go. Maggie's chin lifted. I won't let that town be a place of fear forever. It's where we live now, where our children will grow up. Our children. Eli's voice was soft. You said our. They are ours. Yours as much as mine now. Maggie squeezed his hand. Unless you've changed your mind about that. Never. Eli brought her hand to his lips. I'll have Diego hitch the wagon. We can take Josie if she wants. She's been asking to see the general store. She wants fabric for a dress. Maggie smiled. She's been drawing designs for weeks. I think there might be a boy she's hoping to impress." "A boy." Eli's expression shifted. "What boy? Where did she meet a boy?" "At church last Sunday. The Wheeler's nephew visiting from Denver." Maggie laughed at his face. "Don't look so horrified. She's 17, Eli. It's natural." "Natural doesn't mean I have to like it." "No, but you do have to accept it." Maggie stood and began dressing. She's not a child anymore. None of them are, not really. They've seen too much. "That's what worries me." Eli's voice went quiet. "They've seen so much hardness. What if they don't know how to recognize softness when it comes? They're learning." Maggie pulled on her dress, one of 3 new ones Eli had insisted on buying her. Rosie falls in love with every stray animal she meets. Ellie cries at sad stories again. Even Lottie, fierce, stubborn Lottie, she let Raphael teach her to braid her horse's mane last week. That's softness, Eli. That's healing. And Abby. Abby is reading love poetry. Maggie smiled. "I caught her yesterday hidden in the barn loft with your stepmother's book reading sonnets out loud. She stopped when she saw me, but she was blushing. She's only 15. Old enough to dream." Maggie crossed to him and touched his face. "Let them dream, Eli. Let them hope. It's what we fought for." The ride to Willow Creek took 4 hours. Maggie sat beside Eli on the wagon seat, Josie in the back, with a list of fabrics she wanted and money Eli had pressed into her hand despite her protests. "It's too much," Josie had said. "I don't need silk." "You deserve silk." Eli's voice had been firm. "You deserve whatever makes you happy." Now bouncing along the rutted road, Maggie watched her daughter from the corner of her eye. Josie had changed, since the wedding, since the confrontation with Wade. The tension in her shoulders had eased. The constant vigilance in her eyes had softened. She looked, Maggie realized, like a 17-year-old girl. Finally. "Mama." Josie's voice came from behind them. "Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you love him, Papa Eli, I mean? Do you actually love him, or is this still just arrangement?" Maggie glanced at Eli. He kept his eyes on the road, but she saw his jaw tighten slightly. "I'm learning to," Maggie said carefully. "Love isn't always lightning, Josie. Sometimes it's sunrise, slow and gradual, getting brighter over time." That's not really an answer. It's the honest one. Maggie turned to look at her daughter. "I care for him. I respect him. I trust him, and you know how hard that is for me. Is that love? Maybe. Ask me again in a year. And you." Josie addressed Eli directly. "Do you love her?" "Yes." No hesitation. No qualification. "Since the first night I met her." "How can you be so sure?" Eli was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because I've lived without her. I know what that emptiness feels like. And now that she's here, now that all of you are here, I can't imagine going back to that emptiness. That's how I know." Josie considered this. "The Wheeler boy Matthew, he says he likes me. He asked if he could call on me." Maggie felt Eli stiffen beside her. She put a hand on his knee, warning him to stay calm. "What did you tell him?" Maggie asked. "I told him I'd think about it." Josie's voice was uncertain. "I don't know what to think. I don't know how to—" She stopped. "I've never been courted before. I don't know the rules." "There aren't rules." Eli's voice was carefully neutral. "Not really. Just respect. He treats you with respect or he doesn't see you again. Simple as that. What does respect look like? It looks like asking your mother's permission before calling on you. It looks like keeping his hands to himself unless you invite them. It looks like listening when you talk, not just waiting for his turn to speak." Eli paused. "It looks like what I try to do with your mother every day." Josie was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You're a good man, Papa Eli. I didn't want to believe it at first, but you are. Thank you. Don't let it go to your head." Despite everything, Eli laughed. A real laugh, full and warm, that made Maggie's heart swell. Willow Creek looked different in spring. The courthouse where Maggie had stood on an auction block was just a building now, wood and stone and glass, nothing more. The streets where Wade's men had strutted were ordinary dirt children playing, and dogs barking, and life continuing as it always did. "You all right?" Eli asked as they pulled up to the general store. "Better than all right." Maggie climbed down from the wagon. "I'm free!" They split up Josie to the fabric counter Eli to speak with the marshal Maggie to gather household supplies. She moved through the store with her head high, meeting eyes that once would have slid away in embarrassment or contempt. "Mrs. McAllister." The shopkeeper's wife appeared at her elbow. "I heard about what happened at your ranch, that dreadful Wade man." "He's been dealt with." Maggie's voice was cool. "Yes, well." The woman shifted uncomfortably. "I wanted to say that is some of us wanted to apologize. For the auction. For not doing more to stop it. There wasn't much you could have done." "There was always something." The woman's voice cracked. "We could have spoken up. Could have protested. Could have done anything besides stand there and watch while Judge Prescott sold a widow and her children like cattle." She wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mrs. McAllister. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." Maggie studied the woman's face, saw genuine remorse there, genuine shame. And something inside her, some last hard kernel of bitterness, softened. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saying that. It does help. If there's anything we can do." "There is, actually." Maggie took a breath. "My daughter Abby wants to start a reading circle for young women. She's got ideas about education, about helping girls learn to think for themselves. If you know anyone who might be interested." "My niece." The woman's face brightened. "She's 14, bright as a new penny. I'll bring her out to your ranch if you'll have us." "We'd like that." Eli found her 20 minutes later loading supplies into the wagon. His face was troubled. "Wade's trial is next month," he said. "Marshal Crawford says the evidence is overwhelming. Murder, fraud, conspiracy, they've got witnesses lining up to testify. That's good news." "It is." Eli helped her lift a sack of flour. "But there's something else, something he wouldn't tell me directly. He said to be careful. Said Wade still has friends even behind bars." "You think someone might try something?" "I think we stay vigilant." Eli's voice hardened. "But I also think we don't let fear rule us anymore. We've earned the right to live in peace, Maggie. I won't give that up." "Neither will I." They found Josie at the fabric counter, arms full of blue cotton and white lace. Her face was flushed with excitement. "Look, Mama, the shopkeeper gave me extra thread at no charge. Said it was a wedding gift even though your wedding was months ago." She held up the fabric. "Do you think Matthew will like blue?" "Matthew will like whatever you're wearing," Eli said dryly. "If he doesn't, he's blind." Josie laughed, really laughed, and Maggie felt tears prick her eyes. This was what healing looked like. This was what she'd fought for. Summer brought growth of every kind. The ranch thrived cattle, fattening on new grass chickens, producing more eggs than the family could eat. The garden Maggie planted, yielding beans and tomatoes and corn. Rafael and Diego had become fixtures of the household, joining family dinners without question, teaching the children Spanish words and card games and songs from their childhood in Mexico. But the most important growth happened inside the house. Lottie rode better than most men in the territory, now her wild spirit channeled into something productive. She'd taken to gentling horses, the ones too skittish for regular breaking, and Rafael said she had a gift. Ellie had stopped crying at every small upset. Instead, she'd started drawing pictures of the ranch, the mountains the family gathered around the dinner table. Eli had bought her proper art supplies on his last trip to town, and she'd cried then, but they were happy tears. Rosie had adopted every stray animal within 10 miles. The barn now housed 2 cats, a 3-legged dog, and a crow with a broken wing that had somehow learned to say biscuit. Eli pretended to be exasperated, but Maggie caught him feeding the crow from his own plate more than once. Lily had bloomed into a chatterbox, her shyness melting away in the warmth of a safe home. She followed Eli everywhere, asking questions about everything, and he answered each one with patient attention. Sammy, no longer a toddler, now a sturdy 4-year-old, had decided that Eli was the center of the universe. He copied everything his Papa Eli did, from the way he walked to the way he drank his coffee. The sight of them together, big man and tiny boy, moving in unconscious synchronization, made Maggie's heart crack open every time. And Abby had transformed most of all. The suspicious, bitter 15-year-old who'd arrived at the ranch clutching a Bible like armor had become something else entirely. She read voraciously now, not just scripture but poetry, philosophy novels. She'd started her reading circle with 3 girls from neighboring ranches, and it had grown to 8. She talked about education, about women's rights, about a future where girls like her sisters wouldn't be sold at auction. "She's going to change the world," Eli said one evening, watching Abby lead a discussion with her circle. "You know that, right?" "I know." Maggie leaned against his shoulder. "She scares me a little." "Good scared or bad scared?" "Good scared. The kind of scared you feel when you realize your child is going to be bigger than you, do more than you ever could." "That's the point, isn't it?" Eli's arm came around her. "Raising children who surpass us. That's what all of this is for." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise, I'm just old." He smiled. "And I've had good teachers." Fall brought the trial. Marshall Crawford rode out personally to escort Eli and Maggie to Denver, where Wade would face justice. The courthouse was grand marble columns and high ceilings, nothing like the cramped room in Willow Creek. Wade sat at the defendant's table, his face gray and haggard, the arrogance finally beaten out of him. "Mr. and Mrs. McAllister." The prosecutor approached them before the proceedings began. "Your testimony will be crucial. Are you prepared?" "We're ready," Maggie said. And she was. For the first time in her life, she was ready to stand before powerful men and speak her truth. She testified for 3 hours, told them about the auction, about Wade's threats about his men coming to the ranch, told them about her daughter, 17 years old, being bid on like livestock, told them about Eli, a stranger who spent his life savings to save a family he didn't know. Wade's lawyer tried to rattle her, called her a liar, a thief, a woman of loose morals, implied that she'd seduced Eli, manipulated him, used him for his money. Maggie didn't flinch. "I was a widow with 7 children." She said, her voice clear and steady. "I had nothing, no money, no home, no protection. Your client wanted to buy my eldest daughter for purposes I won't name in this courtroom. Mr. McAllister stopped him. That's not manipulation, sir. That's salvation." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Wade's lawyer sat down defeated. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, Maggie felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, no relief. Just emptiness where the fear used to live. "It's over," Eli said as they left the courthouse. "Really over this time." "I know." Maggie took his hand. "I feel like I should feel something. Victory maybe, or peace." "What do you feel?" "Tired." She leaned against him. "Tired and grateful and ready to go home." "Then let's go home." Winter came again, but it felt different this year. The house was warm and full. 9 people gathered around a table meant for 4, somehow making it work. On Christmas Eve, after the children were in bed, Maggie and Eli sat by the fire. A year had passed since the auction. A year of fear and hope and slow, steady healing. "I have something for you," Eli said. He pulled a small box from his pocket. "You already gave me presents. This is different." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not the wedding band she already wore, but something new. A simple gold band with a small ruby set in its center. "I bought this in Denver," Eli said, "during the trial. I wanted you to have something that was just yours. Not Hannah's ring, not a symbol of protection or legal necessity. Just a gift from me to you. Maggie stared at the ring. It's beautiful. There's something else. Eli's voice roughened. You asked me once what I wanted from you. I said nothing you weren't willing to give. That's still true. But I need to tell you what I hope for. What I dream about when I let myself dream. Tell me. I dream about waking up with you beside me. Really beside me, not in separate beds, not with walls between us. I dream about growing old with you, watching our grandchildren run across this land. I dream about... His voice broke. I dream about you loving me back, the way I love you. Maggie felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Eli, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to feel what I feel. I just needed you to know. I do, though. The words came out before she could stop them. Love you, I mean. I do. Eli went completely still. What? I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was always happening from that first night at the Wheelers. Maybe it happened when you built beds for my children, or when you stood on the porch facing 20 men, or when you let Josie hug you and looked like she'd given you the moon. Maggie took his face in her hands. I love you, Elijah McAllister. Not because I have to, because I want to, because you're the best man I've ever known. Maggie? Shh. She kissed him. Not the gentle questioning kisses they'd shared before, but something deeper, something real. Take me to bed, husband. I've made you wait long enough. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He carried her across the threshold of the bedroom, their bedroom now truly theirs, and closed the door softly behind them. Years passed. Good years full of growth and change and the ordinary miracles of family life. Josie married Matthew Wheeler at 19. They built a house on the neighboring ranch close enough to visit, but far enough to have their own life. She had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and became the finest horse breeder in the territory. Abby went east to college, one of the first women admitted to a university in Colorado. She became a teacher, then a principal, then a fierce advocate for girls' education. She never married, never wanted to, said she had too much work to do. Lottie stayed on the ranch, eventually taking over its management when Eli's bones got too old for daily riding. She married a quiet blacksmith who understood that she needed Sky and horses more than she needed him and loved her for it anyway. Ellie became an artist. Her paintings hung in galleries from Denver to San Francisco, images of ranch life and mountain beauty that captured something essential about the West. She married a poet she met at one of Abby's lectures, and they traveled the world together. Rosie opened an animal sanctuary. Every stray, every wounded creature, every abandoned pet found its way to her door. She said she'd learned from the best from a man who'd taken in strays himself once upon a time. Lily became a doctor, one of the first women to practice medicine in the territory. She delivered babies and set bones and fought for every life that came under her care. When people asked why she'd chosen such a hard path, she said it was because someone had once fought for her. She wanted to return the favor. And Sammy became a rancher just like his papa. He inherited Eli's quiet strength and Maggie's fierce determination. He raised cattle and children and generations of memories on land that had once been wilderness. On the day Eli died peacefully in his sleep, at the age of 78, Sammy found his mother sitting by the bed holding his father's hand. "He's gone," Maggie said quietly. "He went easy. No pain. Mama, don't cry for him." Maggie's voice was firm despite her tears. "He lived a good life. A full life. Better than he ever expected." She looked at her son. "He told me once that he'd been waiting his whole life for something worth fighting for. And then he found it." "Found what?" "Us." Maggie smiled through her tears. "A family. A home. Something to love and be loved by." She squeezed Eli's hand one last time. "He found everything he ever wanted. And so did I." The funeral was held on the ranch under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. 7 children, grown now with children and grandchildren of their own, stood together as Reverend Morrison spoke words of comfort and hope. Maggie stood at the grave long after everyone else had gone. She looked at the headstone, simple granite carved with words Eli had chosen himself years ago. Elijah Nathaniel McAllister, 1841 to 1919. Husband. Father. Saved. Saved, Maggie whispered. You always did have a way with words. She touched the stone warm from the afternoon sun and let herself remember. The courthouse in Willow Creek. The auction block. The moment a stranger had walked through the door and changed everything. 40 years. 40 years of marriage, of partnership, of a love that had grown from necessity into something unshakable. 7 children raised together, 16 grandchildren and counting, a legacy that would outlast them both. "I'll see you soon," Maggie said. "Don't get too comfortable up there without me." She turned and walked back toward the house. Their house, the house they'd built together, from nothing but hope and determination. Behind her, the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. She was 92 when she finally joined him. Her children found her in the rocking chair Eli had made for her, a smile on her face. Hannah's poetry book open in her lap to a page she'd marked years ago. The poem was about home, about finding where you belong, about hearts that recognize each other across crowded rooms and impossible circumstances. Margaret Catherine McAllister was buried beside her husband under the same blue Colorado sky. Their headstones stood side by side, 2 halves of a whole finally reunited. The inscription on hers was simple, chosen by her children who knew her best. Margaret Catherine McAllister, 1845 to 1937. Mother, wife, survivor. Below that, smaller letters added by her grandchildren. She chose love. Love chose back. And in the end, that was all that needed to be said. A woman sold at auction with 7 children clinging to her skirts had found salvation in a stranger's gray eyes. That stranger had found redemption in her strength. Together, they'd built something that would last for generations. A family forged not by blood, but by choice. Not by obligation, but by love. That was the story of Maggie and Eli McAllister. That was the truth that mattered long after courthouses crumbled, and auction blocks rotted, and the men who'd tried to break them were forgotten. Love chosen and fought for and earned through 1,000 ordinary days had won. Love always wins.